The government has embarked on bold economic reforms and moving Mauritius away from the reliance on trade and towards more global competitiveness. Now, business facilitation has played a key role in that. Now, for more, I spoke to Raj Makund. He's the Director for Joint Economic Council. Let's take a look.
Economic integration, economic growth is very high on the agenda in Africa. And we've seen that there is huge interest on the part of a number of major players in this new world economic architecture to invest in Africa. However, what we need is to improve the investment environment so that we can optimize the advent of that investment. And in this trajectory, it is important that we improve what we call business facilitation. So the focus of the discussions in one of the sessions was on business facilitation. Now, among the IORA membership, we have top players like Singapore, like Australia and Malaysia, and we have also a number of countries which are not doing very well with respect to business facilitation if we were to measure them by the doing business report of the World Bank. So with such indicators, it was felt that it would be important to encourage what we say as an exchange of experience, capacity building, peer-to-peer learning, so that the countries within the IORA can really benefit among its own membership to improve what we call the business environment, to be able to encourage maximum private sector investment in their respective countries.
Raj, you made mention of Singapore being as one of the top rankings and some countries that are lagging behind. Are you able to perhaps just shed some light as to why it is that we are seeing such disparities between the different countries and what needs to be addressed?
Well, in our discussions, a number of key factors were identified. I think I'll mention about 3 or 4 of those key factors. First and foremost, a very meaningful public-private sector dialogue, because the private sector would know what are the constraints, and the policymakers would have the capacity to make the policy reforms. So a very structured public-private sector dialogue is extremely important to improve the business environment. Secondly, we also came out with the fact that technology can be important, and some of our colleagues mentioned that from India, because technology can be a major facilitator. Thirdly, and that's very important, clarity on the policies, so that we can have the guidelines, we can have transparency, because investors, they really like to see transparency, clarity, and they know in which investment environment they are moving. A fourth and last factor was also in terms of the trade facilitation. That is also a component in the business facilitation. And it was seen that a number of countries doing quite well, and as I said, we mentioned Singapore. There are also some countries doing very well in some specific areas. And at the end of our discussions, we agreed that there will be some specific program for peer-to-peer learning, for capacity building. For example, registration of companies. In Mauritius, we've done some quite good work, and we are ready to share this particular activity with the other members of IORA. So peer-to-peer capacity building came out as an important factor, but as I said, public-private sector dialogue is a key substratum for really improving well in business environment and business facilitation.
You mentioned the role of public sector and government interaction is very important. Are you confident that we're going to be able to circumvent maybe some of the challenges? Are governments open to this? Do we have government will when it comes to making sure that the policies are in place in order to foster through with with making sure that business can be done in a much better or more efficient way?
You know, in one of the presentations made by the World Bank, they highlighted that a number of countries in Africa are major reformers. And a number of countries in Africa, if we measure the rate of reforms that they are doing, is quite high. So I think there are clear opportunities today. There is a clear appetite for wanting to make economic growth. Investment is moving in, and I would believe that it's a very rare mix of circumstances whereby policymakers will have to make changes, and we are seeing it happen. So I think from the discussions we've had, there were also a number of representatives from governments in our discussions, and we saw that there was very much commitment to make reforms, because then there will be able to be really opportunities to maximize those investment coming in the country, and therefore really go through some real good economic growth within the next few years in front of us.